the relationships that he was able to build, because every single kid had lost somebody. He's not going to get that at school. He's not going to get that here at home.
Welcome to the C.O.P.S podcast. I'm Tony Williams, multimedia specialist here at Concerns of Police Survivors. This morning, joined with me is Keira Knox, surviving spouse of Officer Jason Knox, whose end of watch is May 2nd of 2020. Keira, how are you doing this morning?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very good. I'm very good. I'm happy you're willing to sit down with us and talk a little bit about your life and your sort of journey joining the C.O.P.S family. So let's start with you and Jason. Do you guys have a good meet cute story? How'd you meet?
Yeah, so short version, I was still in high school and he was actually a volunteer firefighter. And my aunt was a paramedic at the time, and she kind of was like, "Hey, I've got this niece, y'all should talk." And this was MySpace age. Okay, so I'm aging myself here. So we checked out each other's MySpaces and yeah, went out on a date in March of 2005, and the rest is just history.
That's amazing. So Jason died in a helicopter crash, correct?
He did. So his role in the Air Support Division was he was a tactical flight officer. So he was in charge of the radio communication, the cameras, the FLIR, the spotlight. He was literally the eyes of everything. The pilot just flew. That was their job. He worked night shift, and they got called out for a possible drowning in a bayou. Houston has a lot of bayous here. So they go up, they're looking for this, possible body. Later on, it came to be that it was, in fact, a fake 911 call. There was, in fact, nobody actually in the bayou. And for whatever reason, the helicopter spun out of control and crashed into the leasing office of an apartment complex. This was about 2 a.m. So they go down. It was kind of a silver lining because there were so many people out looking for this body. There was so many resources already out on the streets. And so when the helicopter went down, oddly enough, nobody heard it. There was no fire, thankfully. So when people were getting flagged down about it, they were like, "What? There's no way," because you would have heard that or seen it. And once they found him, they started their rescue stuff and trying to get him out. But yeah, so I guess I, had the dreaded 2 officers show up at my doorstep at about 3 a.m. He was alive at that point. We didn't know anything else. They had both been transported by life flight. The pilot survived. He had some pretty extensive injuries, and then obviously my husband did not make it. So never made it to surgery. He just had a lot of injuries, so he died at the hospital.
How soon after, I guess, did you sort of meet with the local chapter? Did they sort of come knocking?
I can't tell you exactly when.
But yeah, that fog can be quite crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't that day. It had to have been sometime that next week, because I think the accident had happened on a Saturday night. Yeah. So it had to have been sometime that week. Or maybe the week after. I don't know if it was before or after the funeral, honestly, but it was very closely after.
What was that initial pitch like? Were you sitting there and going, "These people are crazy," or what was going on with you as they were telling you about cops?
You know what? 100% honesty. When they first came, I thought not that they were crazy. There was no bad vibes. It was different. And I don't know if it was the state of mind I was in or like, was this really happening? Or I wasn't in the place to fully understand and accept what was happening, I guess. But yeah, that first time they came, I was like I had just a lot of reservations, and I didn't really know what would come from cops until I started to get more involved. And now it's like, oh my gosh, I wish I had seen this, sooner, but I'm in it now and I love it. So
You never quite know. Obviously, like, part of my job is to tell people about cops. And when I tell people out and about, people are either very concerned or very confused. So I can only imagine having a sort of conversation like that with somebody who, the week before, or even 2 weeks, even 6 months before, had their family member die, right?
right.
And so you finally decided, okay, these people weren't, maybe they might be saying something worthwhile.
So it was in the height of COVID. So everything was very not the normal, routine. Um, so in 21, which is the year he would have been honored, that was the year they had postponed it to October. Um, but instead, I grabbed 9 of my closest friends and we went to DC anyways during what would have been police week. Um, so I went on my own in May and I got to see his name on the wall and do all the things by myself with my closest friends. And that was, I think, way more rewarding for me. So I did not go in October because I had just been there, but then I did go the following year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was in 2022 that I'm gonna guess some people had been saying, hey, you've got kids, there's kids camp, there's a spouses retreat, maybe you should look into some of these events. How did you sort of get more involved with cops, and what was that coming to that decision of, like, maybe we should start going to these programs, like, for you?
Yeah. I don't know if it was any one person specifically that was like, hey, you should check out these camps. I think just as time went on and other families were losing their loved ones, I started to, I guess, hear more people talking about it, and then their kids were going. So it was like, okay, let's, check it out. And at the time, my son was old enough, but my daughter was not. So that was our first camp, was 22. It was just him and I. I had no idea what to expect. And he loved it. And he was like, I want to go back every single year. And I was like, okay, I will rough it for a week for you. And so here we are going into year 3 now.
It's wild the things we'll do for the people we love.
Oh, 1,000%. Yes.
Absolutely. And so you got sort of a front row seat. And I know kids camp is not just for the kids. That's one of the sort of preconceptions that some folks have, is that kids camp is just for the kids. But we're going to start talking about the kids, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what you got out of it. But what is it like, in a change of him from that sort of day one to after that first kids camp? What was that change like?
Seeing the amount of kids and the relationships that he was able to build, because every single kid had lost somebody. He's not going to get that at school. He's not going to get that here at home. Wow, this is unexpected. So just being able to very openly say, my dad died, and this, and this, just very blunt, because kids, literally say it as it is. But I mean, he's got friends now that he talks to all the time from other states. I mean, it's a huge deal.
I can tell. We can see it from the outside, but there is no perspective closer than being a parent there, because you watch your kids grow up every single day. And I know that you want the best for them. And so it's very interesting to see, because at the beginning of the week, especially with the parents, you kind of see they're worried for themselves a little bit. They're worried about the kids a little bit. They're worried about who the heck is this organization a little bit. They're worried, what did I get myself into? A lot bit usually, right?
Yeah.
By the end of the week, I guess let me rephrase it a little bit differently. What did you get out of kids camp?
That first year it was, it was new and it was just me and him. I didn't really know a lot of people. Um, and I have shared my story so many times that it's hard to explain. There were so many other new people there. Um, but it's different because after attending so many C.O.P.S programs, my family and I are literally an anomaly. I mean, the relationship I have with my in-laws, and I'm not saying this is for everybody, but the majority is, in-laws, that relationship is just totally different after their officer dies. And I go to these camps and I hear these stories, and then I think, oh my God, I I have four parents like that I couldn't even get rid of even if I wanted to. Um, so it's just different. So that first year I didn't feel like I really got anything, but years since I keep sharing my story because I'm hoping to help somebody else. That I have that relationship with my in-laws, that I am engaged, and I'm about to get married, and life will get better. Like I promise, because I'm doing it. And so I feel like I'm giving more than I'm bringing back, if that makes sense. I don't know. But it's good for me too. It's the same for
Yeah,
spouses.
I interviewed Connie Moyer, right, national president, and all around um, gregarious personality, right? And one of the things she said has stuck with me since, and it was that as a kid, she was taught that we find ourselves and we um, build ourselves through service to others. Um, and it kind of feels like with many survivors, part of rebuilding themselves is that helping others, that serving others.
Oh, yes. I mean, for me, yes.
So after kids camp, it's what, a month and a half from kids camp to spouses retreat?
Yeah. I went to kids camp first, and then I think I had met some other people, and they were like, "Oh, you should come to spouses." And I was like, "Okay, it'll be different than kids camp. It's obviously just spouses, and it was even, I think, better for me as the spouse personally, because same thing. I feel like I got to share my story. You don't have to worry. You don't have to worry about the kids. It's just about you. And yeah, that was it's just different on a different level.
If you were sitting across from a surviving spouse with some youngins in much the same scenario that you were in 2020, we'll say a lot of it is the same, right? Helicopter crash, down to the details, just to make this sort of a little bit easier. Um, what would you tell them about attending things like kids camp and like spouses, and whether or not it's important for them to do that?
Oh gosh. Um, I mean, yes, I would absolutely tell them to go because again, it's hard to describe. Like, and I mean, I've met spouses that have never been to kids camp, and so sometimes I feel like I've convinced spouses you need to go to kids camp. It'll be good for you. I convinced moms at kids camp to come to spouses, and they came, and so. But yes, it's just that love and support that every single person there gets it and is willing to help And even though nobody's grief is the same, we're all there for the same reason. Um, but yeah, it's just, it's the relationships that you can have with other spouses and these relationships that your kids will have forever. I mean, it's absolutely amazing.
And then as we kind of come to a close, I guess one thing I should ask you is, you mentioned that you're now engaged.
Yeah.
Is there any thought of bringing, your fiance to like a spouses for couples?
So we actually had every intention of going to Spouses for Couples until his parents got us very expensive tickets to the Dallas Stars game, which is smack dab in the middle of Spouses. And they were non-refundable tickets. So I was like, are you serious? So we're gonna have to put that off till next year. But it was actually his idea before it was mine. So
That's awesome. And I assume the kids love him.
they do. He's a firefighter. Also a first responder. Um, and he lost a brother who was a DPS trooper. It was not a line of duty death, but it was a work-related older injury. And so he gets it on a just totally different level. But yes, my parents love him. My other sets of parents love him because, that's a package deal. The kids love him. So
Wow.
yeah, the countdown's
Congrats.
on. Thank you very much.
You're probably very, very busy as planning goes. So I won't take up too much more of your time.
Oh no, you're fine.
Is there anything that you feel is important, whether it be to your story or something you want to communicate to other survivors who may be listening to this now? Is there something you'd like to say that we haven't asked about?
Give it a shot, even if you hate it at the end of the week, at least you can say you did it. Kids camp is not for the faint of heart. But again, it's the things that you do for your kids. And this past year, I got to take my daughter. And so it was really funny because my son, we get there and he's like, bye. Like he's a pro. He's got his friends, he knows what to do, where to be. And I feel like this year they're both gonna just be like off doing their own thing. And it's just so comforting for them. So try out all of the programs at least once and see.
Well, once again, thank you, Keira, for sitting down with us. It's been amazing to get to talk with you and hear your story and talk about your little ones and your life. Thank you so much. You've been listening to the Concerns of Police Survivors podcast. You can learn more about Concerns of Police Survivors and find those hands-on programs that Keira mentioned that you should check out on concernsofpolicesurvivors.org. I've been Tony Williams, multimedia specialist here at Concerns of Police Survivors, and we'll see you next time.